So the whole point of the talk is to give an anthropological analysis of privacy. This is because that is something that we don't, yeah? Cool. An anthropological analysis of privacy. That is not something that it often happens. And this is because my background is in anthropology. I studied law, anthropology, and society, so understanding how society and law combine together and how society shapes the law and how the law shapes society. And while doing so, it's going to happen. I have faith. While doing so, I focus a lot on the interplay between democracy and freedom of speech. So how can we have both? And how we cannot have democracy without freedom of speech, and we cannot have freedom of speech without democracy. So I'm going to help you to set it up. Oh. Yeah, we made it. OK. So my name is Costanza, and I work for the Swarm Foundation, a decentralized and censorship-resistant storage and communication network. And like I mentioned before, I'm going to be talking about an anthropological analysis of privacy. Like always, disclaimers. Everything I'm saying is a personal view, and I do not represent Swarm. I do not represent any organization that I was part of. And yeah, also, don't take anything I'm saying for granted, but do your own research. So without any further ado, the question I'm seeking to answer today is, why do states impose restrictions on privacy? And the question is quite gigantic. And I'm not looking to give a universal theory of privacy. We only have 20 minutes. So what we're going to do is to examine a theory of privacy laws in the context of the surveillance state institution against crypto privacy toolings. So we will see why states fear privacy and how crypto challenge that and why they fear us. So to do so, I'm first going to walk through the anthropological method, and then I'll seek to answer those questions. The institution of the surveillance state, how does it work? What's the relationship between the institution of the surveillance state and anti-privacy laws? And why is that the grip of the surveillance state on crypto projects is tightening? Like, we see that every day. And I hope to address the questions that my family keep on asking me every Christmas. You're an anthropologist. What are you doing in crypto? So what is anthropology, and why there's something important here? Anthropology studies the cultural aspect of human societies. It examines societal elements like norms, values, practices, languages, economics, social structures, rituals, beliefs, artifacts, laws. So we anthropologists aim to understand how people within different cultural contexts interact, see, and interpret the world around us, the world around people. So it's kind of like group therapist, a psychologist for a group. And culture and its development consist in technological inventions. That could be the wheel, or that could be the blockchain. And that is discovered by man. And it is being applied to human ends. So the anthropological method here will allow us to understand the underpinning reasons behind privacy laws and the surveillance state. And I truly hope that this talk will give everyone the tool to build products that can withstand the grip of privacy without compromising on human rights. So in anthropology, nothing should be taken for granted. Not just like obvious elements like your religion, but everybody here is sitting on a chair. That is a cultural artifact. Not all societies, people sit on chairs, not in the way that everyone here is sitting. So nothing is universal, except for one thing, the need to preserve life. So that means sheltering from dangers like the weather, animals, enemies, sex, both to reproduce and to satisfy a primordial urge, and food. So all the elements of the society, from clothing to laptops, are built to satisfy those needs. So why do we live in a society where surveillance is deemed necessary to satisfy those needs? Why surveillance and why not privacy? What's happening? So any cultural artifact is significant only when placed within the institution it belongs. So privacy laws are cultural artifacts that should be analyzed in the context of the surveillance institution. Otherwise, it will be like analyzing a pack of dogs using a laptop. That will make no sense whatsoever. So institutions are organized constituent of a community. They can be a tool for freedom or a tool for oppression. And so we need to understand the narrative that promotes the institution of surveillance, which is a very fancy way of saying, why does my high school friend support the surveillance state? Why does she believe that privacy is dangerous? So here, I would like to look at surveillance against crypto projects, against privacy toolings, as an institution that is being in the process of being legitimized. So institutions have a universal structure, any type of institutions. They have a charter, aka a collective purpose that defines the values of the institution and why we have it. So that means that we have the real and the mythological history. We have the statement of big ideals and reason why. So the charter of the institution is related to the mythologies and the moral principles underpinning it. And in the case of modern states, even before constitutional laws, before the Constitution, before the law, or whatever legal documents, we have a mythological reinterpretation of the history in order to shape the sentiments and emotions associated with the symbol of the state. So we have reference to the past that is being constantly rewritten, and we have emotional elements that are talking to the gut of everyone. Now, the surveillance state as an institution gains its legitimacy from reinterpreting the past, creating a symbolism that makes privacy, Web3, crypto extremely dangerous. When Senator Warren here talked about the shadowy supercoder, she created this powerful image of people behind crypto being faceless, almost like not human, figures that operate in the dark, outside of society, in an opaque and non-transparent and threatening manner, with abilities that transcend those of normal people. So a super anti-hero, a super villain operating against society. Similarly, when Tornado Cash was sanctioned because it facilitated money laundering on behalf of sanctioned countries, all the US individuals and entities are prohibited from any transaction with the platform. But when BNP Paribas engaged in similar activities with more than almost $500 million of transactions involving countries that are sanctioned by the US. And they pled guilty, by the way. Not only the official press release makes no mention of money laundering, but nobody is prohibited with dealing with BNP Paribas. And we have similar cases of big TradFi companies of big banks that committed money laundering, didn't go to jail, or maybe like one person went to jail, but they're still operating fine, they're well and alive. So the extreme treatment that Tornado Cash got was pretty unique. And that served the purpose of reinforcing the symbolism that crypto and privacy tooling built on Bot3 is so dangerous that it needs to be killed altogether. Now it's gonna get fun. So institutions have a system of organized activities, which is made by personnel, people. The group of followers that gets organized together for the execution of the institution's function. And this is something that we need to be clear. To be the personnel of the institution, you don't need to opt in. You don't need to subscribe to proactively seek to be part of the institution. The mere act of birth, so being alive, makes you part of a social group. It gives you a cultural identity. It gives boundaries to your persona. And so sometimes that means that being born, being alive, is enough to subscribe you to an institution without opting in, even if you fundamentally disagree with the institution. So we are all part of the institution of the surveillance state here. Especially with regard to the US surveillance. Even those of us that are lucky enough to be born not in the US, we are subject to the US imperialism and its reach. So we are part of that institution. So me, you, Tornado Cash developers, Senator Warren, the head of NSA, law enforcement officials, we are all part of the same group in this. Next slide. So in the system of organized activities, we also have the material apparatus, which is a body of artifacts that is basically the hardware or the code that is used to spy on us. Our phones, internet, the code, everything that is being used by the institution. And then we have activities, the act of spying, the actions that the institution is carrying out to satisfy its purpose. So spying and also the bureaucracy behind surveillance. This is all part of the activities, the middleware, if you want it. And finally, we have the norms, the codified or customary laws, the religious values, the moral values, so the software of the institution. And in our quest to understand privacy as opposed to surveillance, the first thing we need to ask is how surveillance is implemented, at least in a perfect world. In a perfect world, which is not this one, unfortunately, law enforcement follows the law. So what is law? Why do men obey to certain rules? Law is an instrument for the accomplishment of the real task of a group. So, for example, rules about property, duty, privilege, they exist to solve practical problems through the use of social cooperation and cultural values. So basically, law is like a tool, just like Solidity or Python. And so as an anthropologist, I will argue that law is supposed to aim at preserving society. And as society is evolving because of human rights movement, because of technological advancement, law has to be flexible and change over time, because the direction of law is connected to the development of extrajudicial process. So if law aims at protecting the society, if an institution chooses to exist, a number of essential tasks fail to be done. So anti-privacy laws here are to protect the institution of surveillance. They're here to kill the resistance. So privacy-preserving crypto projects. But why? what tasks choose to exist if the institution of surveillance chooses to exist? What the hell went wrong here? Why do we have it? So the personnel of the institution engages in activities obeying the norms and using all the material apparatus. And those that are personnel of the institution, so everyone here, but don't obey the norms of the institutions because work for projects that go in direct opposition of the surveillance state institution, like privacy developers, are a virus that the organism needs to kill in order to survive. So here we have the function, the need around which the institution is built, satisfying our primordial needs for security, sex, and food. And if you follow the narrative, so if you read newspapers or talk to people outside of the crypto space, the purpose of the institution of the surveillance state is protecting society from external threats. So protecting people from within the state or its allies. This is because states, as we know them, are defined by the monopoly of, hold on, I'm gonna move, are defined by the monopoly of the legitimate use of violence. And the crypto projects are permissionless, they don't have a central form of authorities, they transcend borders and jurisdictions. So they are the natural-born enemies of the modern nation states. This is because of their essence, they transcend the traditional form of control. As the cultural artifact, the code, is not subject to authority. So privacy tooling not only can escape the grip of the monopoly of violence, they exist to defy the monopoly of violence. And I'm going to give an example here. So this is the chart of the Swarm Foundation as an institution. The collective purpose is to defend digital freedoms by building a censorship-resistant and privacy-preserving permissionless system. There is a mythology. If you read the book of Swarm, you will see that it is nothing short of reinterpretation of what the internet should look like, the problems that are with current society. And the purpose of the institution is to defy censorship and defying the surveillance state. And by doing so, escaping the monopoly of violence and creating a parallel world where we have more freedoms. Yeah. So it is a system of organized activities. There are actions to get a purpose, defending your data against external actors and giving back control to the users. So taking away power and control from governments and from big players like AWS and giving it back to the user. Change the slide. So like before, and this is the funny part, the personnel of the institution engage in activity obeying the norms and using the apparatus. Yeah, so you can see the meme. So, and this is true for every crypto privacy-preserving tooling. It's not just Swarm, but every project. As a privacy-preserving project, the existence of Worm is in violation to the existence of the institution of the surveillance state. And the personnel of Worm, so developers, users, core members, supporters, friends, they have a dual responsibility because on the one hand, they have their duty to Swarm, which they subscribe to, the institution that they seek to join. But they also have their duties to the surveillance state, although they never pledge loyalty to it. And that creates a friction, because joining a privacy project means that you are taking distances from the institution you are born into. And that is not something that anyone can accept. It creates an acceptable precedent. A member of a group escaping the group is the most terrifying thing that can happen in a society. It means that the mythology of the group is wrong. It means that you are caught in a fallacy. And nobody likes to admit that they're wrong. It's scary. It undermines your identity. And it means that your entire systems of belief might fall apart. So privacy laws are here to prevent that. They're here to dehumanize those shadowy supercoders that are on the other side of the law. So that is. Thank you.
I think we have time for one question.
Ooh, exciting.
Who dares? Not all at the same time.
Manu.
Manu, okay, there we go.
Why is it that right now in the crypto space, a lot of people are talking about creating network states if the idea was to escape the state?
That would be super cool, but can you escape reality?
I don't know. We're creating alternatives of reality, no?
Yeah, but in the moment that you cross the street, you're still living in this reality. In the moment that you cross the street with your motorbike and you crash into someone, you can't say, I belong to the network state of Ethereum. You need to obey the law of the country that you are into. So you cannot escape that. What would be cool is to have an intersection between the two, which means taking over. So basically, instead of being in Thailand, you are in this physical space that is the Ethereum network state. So that is the only way that you can escape reality. You can escape the national state, and you can join the then you can join the network state. But as long as you're here, physically here, and you go to an hospital, the hospital is funded by, okay, maybe the hospital can be funded by the network state, but if you cross the road and you crash into someone, which law do you obey? I think that is the main question, that unless we find a way to transcend this reality and make sure that whatever we're doing is not bounded by the law of the physical country you're in, you're always going to be bounded by that.